This was the city where even dreams came with a price. Everything had its cost, even honor. And in this city, one man decided to sell it all. Paris, the city of lights. The Eiffel Tower, a symbol of power, pride, and a nation. But for one man, it was just a structure of iron. Victor Lustig could not be read by people. He stayed silent but observed everything. Within moments, he could read a person's weakness. It all started with a small news snippet, a single line in the paper, and a dangerous plan formed in his mind, a plan that could change history. He had no official title, no office, no power, yet he made himself the government. 6 men sat in the room, all wealthy, all powerful, but one wanted to prove himself, and Victor chose him. Signatures were made, money placed, the Eiffel Tower sold, quietly, without any announcement. The next morning, the city awoke, but Victor Lustig was gone. He was no longer in Paris, and the truth had vanished. Victor had left Paris, but his game was not over. The next move was already in his mind. A few days later, he was in another city, a new city, new people, and the same old trust. Victor knew that real power lies in paper, not in uniform. He did not create fake official letters so that even the truth would be ashamed. This time, the target was not a building, but the greed of the people. He spoke slowly so that people would listen carefully and get caught. No money was promised, only an opportunity was shown. And that was the most dangerous thing. For a few days, everything went exactly according to plan. But in every story, there comes a moment when fate asks questions. One person doubted, and doubt never comes alone. Rumors began to spread and the silence began to break. Victor had a feeling. Now the times were about to change. The atmosphere of the city had changed. Questions were beginning to hide behind the smiles. Those who had laughed with him yesterday were watching him silently today. Victor knew that the game had now entered its final phase. Victor began to listen silently, because the truth often comes in whispers. Every half word, every incomplete sound had become a signal for him. He understood everything without speaking. The eyes of the law were opening, and time was rapidly decreasing. Every passing moment was becoming a danger for him, but Victor's steps were still strong. He considered panic to be weakness. He had decided stopping was now the same as death. Everything in the room reminded him that even one more moment could be dangerous here. There was only one way out now, to get out. Every great player knows, getting out at the right time is the real victory. Victor had learned the same thing, and today he was going to follow the same principle without looking back. But fate played one last trick. The uniform emerging in the light proved that not every plan is complete. This was the moment he always wanted to avoid. There was no fear on Victor's face, only calculation. He knew that this moment was also part of a game, losing or winning. Everything starts with the mind. The handcuffs were tied, but the mind was still free. These iron chains could not stop his thoughts. The next step was still clear in his mind. The prison walls were high, but the story was not over. Some stories become even stronger behind bars. Victor's story was one of them. This was not the end. It was the beginning of a legend. Because some names are locked in the files of the law, but live forever on the pages of history. Prison nights are long, and silence speaks volumes. Victor did not feel imprisoned even within these walls. He knew that the body could be stopped, but not the mind. His thoughts were still free and his plans alive. There were people in prison, and where there were people, there were weaknesses. Victor was watching everything silently. Some guards were impressed by him. Some prisoners wanted to learn from him. Without saying anything, he was influencing everyone. Time passed, and Victor proved that real power lies not in voice, but in presence. One day an opportunity came before him, small but dangerous. An ordinary person would have been afraid, but Victor smiled. He did not break any law, he simply recognized the gap between the laws. That was his true skill. A few weeks later, his name began to appear lightly in the files. Questions arose, and the answers gradually disappeared. When the prison door opened, Victor was not the same man who had come in. He had become quieter and more dangerous. The world outside was the same, but Victor had changed. This was not a comeback. This was the beginning of a new game. After walking out of prison, Victor didn't hide from the world. He simply changed his identity, and that became his most dangerous move. People were looking at him now, but they no longer recognized him. He knew there was no room for mistakes anymore. Every step, every glance, every breath was carefully measured. A single slip could destroy the entire game. This time, Victor turned toward powerful people, the ones who create the law, not break it. He knew the real game always starts there. He didn't speak much, because at this level, words don't matter. Impact does. Silence had become his strongest voice. After a few meetings, the game started again, but this time the field was much larger. It was no longer about cities, it was about systems. Victor began valuing control more than money, because control is the one thing that can buy even the powerful. But the bigger the game becomes, the closer danger moves in. Victor understood this, which is why he stayed ready at all times. This time, the enemy wasn't visible, but Victor could feel it. Some eyes follow you even in the dark. He knew the ending was close. It was either everything or nothing at all. There was no middle ground left anymore. Victor took one step forward, and history held its breath. Because some decisions aren't remembered by people, but by time itself. Victor knew the final phase had begun. The next moves would decide whether his name disappeared forever or became immortal. Every message he sent carried weight now. One wrong word could expose everything he had built in silence. Powerful people started asking questions, but never out loud. In their world, curiosity was more dangerous than anger. Victor stayed calm because panic reveals weakness, and weakness at this level is an invitation. Behind closed doors, decisions were being made. Decisions that could erase a man or crown a legend. Victor understood the truth too well. The higher you rise, the fewer allies remain. Someone finally made a move. Quiet, calculated, and meant to end everything. Victor sensed it before it happened. Survival had taught him to listen to silence. This was the moment where most men break. Victor chose something else. History never remembers the noise. It remembers the one who stood still and won. Every game reaches a moment where returning feels impossible, where every door seems closed and every path fades into uncertainty. This was the moment when most people surrender, but Victor was not built to stop in the dark. The name that had lived behind the curtain for years, surviving only in whispers and fear, was finally stepping into the light. And this moment would demand a price from both sides. Truth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it strikes through a look, a reflection that shakes the soul. In that instant, Victor understood the enemy, the ending, and the cost. This was not a war of weapons or blood. It was a battle of minds, patience, and psychological pressure, where a single mistake could collapse an entire empire. One decision, one moment, years of effort could either vanish or become immortal. This was the point where a man finally meets his true self. Power doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it takes control in complete silence. Victor had turned that silence into his most dangerous weapon. Victory doesn't always bring celebration. Sometimes it brings loneliness, quiet weight, and responsibility. Victor accepted that burden without hesitation. The world only saw the result, read the victory headlines, but no one asked about the price that was paid. This is the real story behind power. The true winner is never the one standing in the spotlight, but the one who quietly changes the direction of history. Victor had become exactly that. Some names are never written in history books. They change the system and disappear into silence. Victor was one of them, a name that ended with the ending itself.